Damn, Rufus got dressed. I'm so sorry.
Shane said to blame it on him. So, folks, tonight is on Shane. Welcome to episode 5 of Circle City Goats and Dogs. And Shane, you'll have your opportunity to talk in a minute. So just give us a second. We've gotten through our senior year of high school. We're now on to the college years. And I want to warn or remind the three of y'all that most of the statute of limitations in the following states have expired. Most: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. I haven't gotten confirmation out of Tennessee, so keep those things in mind as we go
I
through
was going
our.
to say we came to Nashville to watch you a couple times in spring games.
That's right.
We got some Tennessee issues out there
Well, fellas,
potentially.
welcome to episode 5. How's y'all's week been?
Been good.
Good.
Statute of limitations may have run out, but the bro code's still in effect.
I'm just, in one regard, I'm kind of glad that A-Frame, that Arnold's not here tonight. It might get ugly. We're talking the fall or the summer of '86, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But the summer of '86, 3 weeks after we graduate, I have elbow surgery, and I go up to Nashville to start my college career. I had my elbow done by Dr. Andrews to take some chip bones out of the elbow. And I got into the rehab program of the football program, and I started taking some classes. But you guys, I assume, all stayed at home that summer. When did you actually, Chris, we'll start with you, Rufus. When did you take off for Southern?
Oh gosh, back then you went through Rush a little bit earlier. So I actually went up to Birmingham Southern probably 3 or 4 times for Rush to go up there. Fraternity parties, went up there to several fraternity parties. Aaron Chancey was up there at Birmingham Southern. And Richard Bear and I were going up there. There was a few of us, so we went up there a little bit. But I want to say it was after. Didn't college start somewhere around the end of August? Is what I remember. Kind of hard to say. My college is ceasing to exist going forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, no,
Hey.
I'm sorry we got to bring it up. That's
Yeah.
They should have hired you to run the school, man. What can I tell you?
Yeah, no, not
They'd
there.
have closed 10 years sooner had they done that.
Well, I can promise you it wouldn't stay where it was. It would have moved somewhere else. That was part of the issue.
Jane, when did you take off for Auburn?
Probably 4 or 5 days before class started. Left town and pulling my U-Haul, and got moved in the trailer up there, and probably just a few days before classes started.
Well, how did you decide a trailer? I know it's easy for Rufus and me. We're on campus. We get assigned as freshmen. How did you end up in a trailer?
I went up there that summer looking for a place to live. Didn't have an interest or want to live on campus, and just found a trailer park. There were a lot of other guys from Dothan that I knew up there that were living in trailer parks close by. That's just where I ended up.
And Maddox, I know that you stayed home freshman year. I want to say, didn't Arnold stay home, and Phil? Weren't all
Yes.
three of you guys at home freshman
Yes.
year?
Yes.
What was that? I mean, you've graduated high school, but you're still home, but now you're going to college.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal, I mean, it was fine. It worked. It worked well for Arnold because he played baseball for 2 years out there for Coach Frichter.
Yeah.
And Phil was just hanging out with Arnold and myself, whatever we were doing, and he was, still working at the bike shop, and he kind of just gotten out of racing BMX bikes, but and I had agreed to go out there and play tennis for a year with Coach Oppert. So, it's kind of cool to be, out there with people that but it's also not kind of cool to still be at home your freshman year. That's kind of the give and take of it. I'd probably do it again the same way, but there's a price you pay, just in terms of living that college life, just not really happening at home,
Yeah.
but it was fine.
Rufus, you had a few. There were some Northview or Dothan kids already on campus, or that you were coming in with. So you knew a few folks, but you certainly met tons of folks. I didn't know anybody, and I was terribly homesick that first couple of weeks. I'm like, what am I? I got older ball players on either side of me, could care less about me, who I was, and it took a minute for me to get acclimated and to get used to all of that. But Rufus, how long did you jump straight into fraternity stuff and just like you had been there forever, or was there kind of a transition for you that took a bit?
Well, I'll tell you the funny part of it was Birmingham Southern had dorms that had different rules, and this was what's funny. So I didn't go in with a roommate, so I was assigned a roommate, so a total stranger. And because mom MJ filled out most of the paperwork, as you can imagine, as a mother would do, you had total visitation, you had limited visitation, you had more limited visitation, then you had no visitation, and that meant of girls in your dorm. So she did one up from no visitation.
I was going to say, everything like that.
Yeah. So
she knew you very well, didn't she, Rufus?
we were in the basement, and there were only six rooms on the entire campus that had that limited visitation. And my RA, which was totally ironic. So I go in, I meet my roommate, Alan, where when we moved in, I came with my clothes in bags because, mom and dad are like, don't take a bunch of suitcases. They had a brother and a sister that went to college. Don't take a bunch of suitcases, put your stuff in bags, and then you can use the bags later for garbage, So I come into Birmingham Southern, rolling into the basement next to the laundromat with bags, and my roommate comes in with his parents, and I mean, his underwear is ironed and folded, and his mom is loading his dresser, and mom and dad are like, "Yep, good, see you. Unload your bags." And so you're meeting people, and you know who my RA is? So I know Chris Maddox will remember this. Y'all will all remember the person, but it was my brother's best friend, Chris Miller. Dr. Miller in Dothan, who is a practicing physician, had gone back to Birmingham Southern, and Chris Miller was my RA. You think I was getting by with anything at college? So yeah, but when you say jumped into fraternities at Southern, you pretty much started rush right at the beginning, and we only had 5 or 6 fraternities, so there's a lot of pressure to join and that sort of thing. So you jumped in real quick. Within a month or so, you were a pledge. So,
Shane, not living in a freshman dorm or on campus, you're kind of isolated from the jump, from the junior
population. I struggled. I found a few guys from Dothan that I hung out with. And then I also had family that lived in Columbus, which was about 30 or 40 minutes away. So I went over there one night a week a lot of times and spent the night with my dad, and then drove back the next morning. But had some other reasons. I found my way back to Dothan a lot of weekends that first year.
What was
Huh?
To see my friends and others. I mean,
breaking news. We had no
That's
idea.
coming. No.
Big surprise there.
Yeah, you had to
But
pass.
it was a struggle. It was during the week though. It was a struggle.
Well, Maddox, you probably had the biggest social transition from kids from just all over the place coming to Wallace. So it was probably just a plethora of new people, if you will.
Well, yeah, there were a lot of new people, but there were also, some kids from the county schools that were going to school there that, you kind of knew who they were. Dothan's a small town, right? Yeah. And so, those of us who were the same age throughout Houston County kind of knew of each other, even if we didn't call somebody our good friend or whatever. Everybody kind of knows who somebody is, right?
Oh, you had the reputation, my friend. They knew you. They knew you.
Oh, they still do. Yeah, they still do.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it was cool. There were some good guys and some good girls that were that we got to hang out with more that we had not hung out with in high school. Yeah, so that was neat. You always want to expand your circle of friends if you can do that. So and then of course as you know, playing football collegiate, I mean, any collegiate sport, whether it's football, tennis, basketball, baseball, whatever, takes a lot of time because you just don't go practice for an hour a day and wait to come back and start playing. That wasn't how it works. So a lot of time hitting tennis balls, and and then a lot of time, I mean, it's college. It's a little bit more difficult than high school, and so you had to study a little bit. So, and of course, socially, no better place to be in the world than Dothan, Alabama, as an 18-year-old single guy, right?
Can we quote you on that one?
Yeah, please do.
I get up to Nashville and I'm doing the rehab and I took a couple of classes that summer just to kind of get used to it a little bit. And I thought that Northview had done a pretty good job of preparing me for school in general. Oh, buddy, when I got into, I happened to take an upper level history class and English class. And the first day on, I'm just a deer in headlights and I'm just swimming against the tide. It felt like every day. But that wasn't the biggest transition. The biggest transition to me wasn't academics and it wasn't athletics. It was the culture on the campus at the time at Vanderbilt in the mid to late 80s. It was an extremely white campus. It was a very highbrow, always dressed to the nines. And I wasn't uncomfortable with kids who had a lot of money or kids that didn't have any money, but it was the attitude, the way that, and this is really what shocked me, was that the typical student on campus felt against the athletes in general. And that took forever for me to figure out why. It took years really to understand it. But it was the social part because a lot of guys who play sports, at least at Vanderbilt, that's the only school I can speak of, they kind of stay in that bubble of athletes. And it may be other sports, but they're athletes. And they don't really mix a ton. Now, there were guys who went fraternities and were very social. But for the most part, they stayed in what we call the Magoogan bubble. That's the big sports complex. But it's an interesting contrast because the typical football player is not going to blend in an econ class with 100 other kids. They don't look alike, they don't dress alike, they don't sound alike. But that was the biggest transition for me freshman year. I know it's kind of long-winded, but it was interesting. It was interesting.
I thought you were going to say the weight room. I thought you were going to say the weight room.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, the quarterbacks had their routine. We didn't have to do what everybody else did. But yeah, there was a lot there too.
So when my Meg was going to Auburn as a freshman, she was at the time she was trying to walk on to play soccer on the women's soccer team. She had got an offer to play Division III at Oglethorpe, but she wanted to go to a big campus, and so she wanted to try to walk on with Coach Hoppa at the time. And Casey Cooper, who you will recall from Dothan, the engineering student at Auburn, kind of took Meg under her wing, and kind of we had a couple lunches and a couple meetings with Casey. And I'll never forget Casey talking about, she said basically, if you're gonna be a college athlete, you can have academics, you can have sports, or you can have social life, and it's pick two of the three. You can't have all three.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of a shock, because everybody thinks I'm going to college. Of course, it's social, but if you're up there as an athlete, it's two of the three, is what she kept saying, and I think she's right. I mean, Meg did not play for Auburn, but I can, Casey was very adamant about, she was going to play softball and she was going to concentrate on academics, and so she's a doctor now. So.
And back when we were in school, the NCAA didn't have the hours limit per week. So we're talking 50, 60 hours a week in some capacity, some obligation. and you got to sleep at some point. You got to eat
Yeah.
at some point. You got to study at some point. But I just remember being very isolated, even though I was redshirted. So I didn't play, I didn't travel in the games, except we dressed out 1 or 2 home games. But pre-internet, pre-cell phone, I probably only talked to you guys once, maybe twice between August and the December break. Because of that, I only called home on Sundays after 5. You know, you had the one phone, and there was no, you know. Anyway, I now sound like old dudes. But speaking of old
We
dudes,
are.
we got our buddy Tyler Chastain has joined us, and Tyler, we got some stories coming up in a minute. But good to see you.
But you know what I remember, Bernard, our freshman year, that I felt was special, and I thought I kept it, and I can't find it. I was going to bring it tonight. You and I wrote letters. People write letters for the young generation. That means on paper, you put an envelope and you put a stamp on it. I have letters from Chris. I have letters from Bernard. I have letters from Shane that we wrote each other letters of what we were doing and how our life was. And I had every intention when I cleaned out Dad's house and somewhere they've disappeared. But I actually had my mother saved those letters, which was, there wasn't a lot of content there, but it was, how you doing, how you acclimating, have you found some friends and groups and stuff. And, that meant a lot back then. That was something that, a touch back, like you said, to the history. And I was fortunate enough to have Suzanne Strahl and Richard Baird and some people go with me to Southern, and being a very small campus, I had a little bit of taste of home, if you will, with some dear friends that were there.
Calvin was up there with you, right?
Calvin Bottoms was there.
You know who I had? I had Jimbo Lofton. He was in grad school.
That's awesome.
He was my connection.
That guy.
He and Amy.
I love that guy.
Yeah. They were my connections freshman year, because when I'd gone up that summer, that was the summer that Ronald Reagan came through Dothan. And I remember watching it on TV at the house of one of the ball players. I had been invited over to dinner and see it. And I don't know, I was just full of pride that the president came through our town. I know that building, that kind of thing. Gosh, that was a couple summers ago, guys. Wow. When I got home in December freshman year, my dad just reminded me of this. I slept 18 hours the first night I got home from college on the winter break. I mean, that's exhausted. Isn't that crazy?
So, poor Ruth probably thought you died when you got home.
Oh, I'm sure she came in there and probably put a mirror under my nose or something just to check. But that summer, after our freshman year, that was the only summer I was home. And that's going to lead me to a couple of pictures that I want to share, because that summer is still my favorite summer that I remember, particularly during college times, because we were all home and we all had adventures. And so I'm going to bring up a picture or two, and I'm going to let Shane start us with the commentary.
What?
On what he's going to see right there. What do you see right there, Shane-O?
Oh, to be that guy again.
Where are we, Shane?
We are at the beach in Panama City.
And for those of you who don't recognize left to right, is Phil Northington, some really hairy dude.
Yeah, tell him what's in the hairy dude's hand. What is that?
That's probably not sunblock, but probably some sun oil.
Oh, yeah, he was coating it.
That's right.
Jersey Shore before Jersey Shore.
And the necklace. Don't forget the necklace. And then we
Jersey Shore, baby. Woo!
Maddox is in the white hat, and we got Rufus wearing a schmata on the far right. Shane, do you remember this is one of many trips we had during the summertime down to Panama City?
Yeah, I do. We had some good times down there.
We sure did. We sure did.
Well, what they also don't realize is we had probably just flipped that sailboat intentionally out in the Gulf, which is kind of what we did on a regular basis down there.
What year was it?
Football games. That was what I remember.
Maddox, when did you break your wrist? Not to bring up a good thought, but
yeah, that was it was either that summer or the next one.
And I want to say, wasn't Bittner and maybe Arnold there too?
Yeah, Arnold was usually with us down there, and Bittner on occasion. Yes, he had gone to Oglethorpe as
Right.
a freshman in Atlanta, and that now there's some funny stories about that school too. Bittner was that's when he changed his name. God love him.
Yeah,
You know,
he's
he
surely missed. That's for sure.
Yep.
That's for sure.
yes.
Now
So
this picture was probably taken probably a few hundred yards from Regency Towers, maybe closer to Spinnaker, La Villa, because they weren't that far apart. Maybe near Edgewater. Rufus, you got any insight or recollection?
I think this one was by your place at Regency, maybe towards Sam Wexler's old house on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, how many hours of football did we play on that beach, and how we didn't kill each other because, we were probably still playing full tackle, full going. And, it was some epic battles on that beach that were so much fun.
Look, if it wasn't football, it was certainly going to be wiffle ball or some other indoor or outdoor sport of some sort.
yeah, wiffle ball was kind of the go-to. It was the classic fallback go-to.
Yeah.
Football in the summers, and it was full contact. And
It was full contact.
That day that my wrist got broken out there, and I was ready to call it a day, but of course, all you guys shamed me into continuing to play. That made a lot of sense. Playing with a broken wrist, I'm surprised my whole arm didn't stick through my
Look it up,
hand by the end of
Maddox.
the day.
You didn't have any blood coming out. Come on.
And then Chris Lee just still calling me something I can't say on live camera.
Look, you
The
were
rest of the
you
day.
were much more of a man and able to deal with it than my broken wrist from 2 years before from the baseball game. So you went up to you, that's for sure.
Going back to this picture, who had the camera and who did we get to take this picture?
I'm sure
Probably some girl you asked.
I was thinking there was a lady walking down the beach and we asked her, but who had the camera?
She was no lady, but yeah, somebody had a camera.
The camera, that's easy. The camera either was Bernard's or Shane's. There is no other option on the camera.
Yeah, there's no other option.
I don't remember having a camera very often, but
I don't either.
A bunch of photos.
I never had a camera, and Phil never had a camera, and Rufus never had a camera.
No.
All right, fellas, this takes us to our sophomore spring. You guys came up for the spring game. Obviously, that's our buddy Tyler on the left from Knoxville, and this was at some sorority, AO Pi sorority party, and
it's a great picture of you, Bernard.
Bernard, like you having a pretty good time at that party.
I was having a good time.
I think Bernard let his hair down a little bit at that one.
The only one without a drink in his hand. He's got a Gatorade bottle.
Well, I mean, who carries a Gatorade bottle to a sorority party? But Shane, I got to ask, where the hell were you looking? What were you? Rufus, what's that face?
I don't remember what she looked like. I mean, I don't remember what I was looking at.
Listen, we're at an AO Pi social. I can tell you exactly what he was looking at in that
picture. And Tyler, another congrats. He just had his third child. Well, she's the first child. Haley got married this past weekend. So Tyler, congrats again, buddy. Yeah. That's awesome.
Congratulations, Tyler.
Congratulations.
All right, I got one more to share, and this one.
Now you're going back in time.
Maddox, you take us. Where are we?
Yeah, this is at 234 South Dean Street in Auburn, Alabama. This was when
What's the occasion?
Shane and Robbie lived in one of the rooms, and Shane and I lived in one of the rooms, and Robbie and Phil lived in the other one. This was my 21st birthday party. Some of which I remember. It was a big time had by all.
It was a big time.
Where are your hands?
That was I still have just such fun, vivid memories of that trip, that occasion. Now, Shane, when did you guys all move into that duplex?
Let's see. So, Chris, now did you come up? I think you thought you came up your freshman year, like spring or was that sophomore?
It was Auburn was on the quarter system back then, and I started the winter quarter of my sophomore year.
Okay.
because I thought I was going to play 2 years of tennis, and then I decided I don't want to play tennis anymore. It's time to go to
So
Auburn.
Chris came up sophomore year, and then he and I started hunting a place because Robbie and Phil we knew were coming up their junior year, and that's how we found the place on Dean Road, and all decided to live together there. And then
Who'd you live with your freshman year?
I had a guy, Murray Johnson, that went to church with me. He didn't come up the first part of the year, but he did the second. So we lived together those first 2 years.
That's terrible. I don't remember, and I apologize for all the times we came and just slept on the floor of your trailer.
No apologies necessary. What we need to talk about is how Chris Lee and Bernard, those last 2 years, showed up frequently on the weekends. It wasn't just my 21st birthday.
Well,
we did.
We can take it to the Bon Jovi concert in Nashville. That I think I may still be driving down 280. This was what was the name of the tour? Was it what was their
Was
big
the
album?
tour called
Slippery When Wet?
or was that just the album? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
And is that the same? Did we go to the concert and then drive to Auburn?
Yeah, yes. The concert was actually in Birmingham, and
I'm sorry, I meant Birmingham.
And we went to the concert from Auburn, and then drove back to Auburn after the concert that night. And you were kind enough to volunteer to drive, Bernard, which was fantastic. And on the way home, the only thing I remember is, the speed limit at the time on 280, the 4-lane highway, was 55 miles an hour. And you drove 45 miles an hour from Birmingham all the way to Auburn. And I just remember begging you. I remember just saying, Bernard, for the love of all that's holy, will you please let me drive this car?
Why didn't I? Why didn't I let
I'll pay the ticket. I don't know. You were completely sober.
But it wasn't all 4-lane, if you remember. It was a lot of 2-lane.
No, but I'm just saying the 4-lane section was 55. Going 45 in the 4-lane.
No.
And it wasn't bad until the first family of turtles passed us going home. And then,
it's true.
It was miserable.
Even more memorable for me was Rufus and I showing up, and he's blaring Metallica as we're rolling into Dean Road. And those weekends were so much fun.
I remember the visit Bernard gave me when I was living in that trailer. He drives in from Nashville, and he starts telling me how he's taking the no-dose
Jolt Cola, no-dose, and then I put in a plug of tobacco about 20 minutes before I get to Shane's, and all this is percolating, and I hit that. Oh, it was
He
horrible.
walks in, sits down on the sofa, and just goes, blah.
Shane was my Florence Nightingale that night. Oh, it was horrible.
Oh my God.
It was bad. It was right after
very bad.
And I had been stopped. I had been stopped in Coosa County on the way down, going too fast. But I had on my state ring.
47.
And I got out of he saw the state champs ring. One conversation led to another, and I got a warning, thankfully. But oh man, that was terrible. But you're right, Tyler. The exam toolkit was Jolt Cola, no-dose, and tobacco. That was horrible.
Yeah, it didn't go well that night, I can tell you.
No, but a night that did go well was the Beastie Boys and Run DMC concert in Tallahassee.
That's pretty good stuff.
That was summer of '87. Again, it's the summer I'm home. And we took the handy dandy Vandy van that Dad owned with that awful tire cover on the back of it.
I missed all the concert tours. I, for some reason, didn't make the concerts. But I do remember the Vandy van.
Oof, how do you not remember the Vandy van? But we go to that concert, and that's the year that the Beastie Boys were blowing up, and they used to have the big phallus balloon on stage, and the police Leon County Police came and took it down. And in the upper deck was a fight, and there were gunshots, and they stopped the con. Do you remember any of this? Stopped the concert, resumed the concert, and we finished. We got home, I don't know what time, but I do remember Arnold driving some of the on the van on the way back because I couldn't.
Yeah, because he couldn't take the 45 miles an hour either.
That's right. That's right.
Somehow he just managed to talk you into it. I still can't figure out why it took 3 hours and 45 minutes to get from Auburn to Birmingham.
Was it that? It only took that long? I don't know. I don't know.
It was, it's one of those things that you'll know forever, Bernard, and we won't, and that's okay. It's.
I just wanted you guys to be safe, have a memorable trip.
Yeah. Oh, I'll never forget it for sure. It was great. And
Phil was with us at the concert, but I don't remember Phil being in the car. Maybe we had more than one car.
Phil was taking a power nap in the back seat on the way home.
I did not make that concert, but as somebody who drove to Auburn, Opelika 1,000 times from Birmingham, just for the record show, it's about an hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Chris, you pledge of fraternity. Shane and Maddox, I don't think you guys were in fraternities other than the Dean Road house. But how important was fraternity life for you at Southern, Chris?
Well, it would, being in a small liberal arts school, gosh, I want to say 70, 80% was fraternity. Very Greek. Like you said, the athletes kind of stuck to themselves. We actually tried to rush several of the athletes to get them in because we had some pretty good athletic programs. But it was the only social life. I mean, I hate to say it. The sororities did not have houses. They had floors. And for the most part, you'd have, the social party at the house. And that was it. I mean, you got to remember, Northview was bigger than the college I went to. It was about 1,500 residential students. So, but the good thing is you got to meet other people. Elizabeth Tucker's husband's a dear friend of mine. He was in another fraternity. Dr. Young, who's been down there practicing in Dothan Enterprise for 1,000,000 years, was in another fraternity. So it was still a small campus, but you were very much in the fraternity.
And Shane or Maddox, how did you guys handle? None of you guys never lived on campus or in the dorms or in the traditional housing. You lived off campus. Where did you get your social from? How did you meet other kids and socialize with them when you weren't in school or in class?
Well, I think one of the cool things about being a student at Auburn at the time was the Greek life socially was not as important at Auburn as it was in Tuscaloosa. I mean, socially you had to be in the Greek system in Tuscaloosa back then. I don't know that it's terribly different now, but at Auburn, we had a lot of friends that were in fraternities, and we hung out with those guys. They would ask us to come to the house for the band parties, and so we pretty much went anywhere we wanted to go because we had so many friends and so many different fraternities, and so it was never an issue. And then a couple of guys we met from a couple of other fraternities because they had played. We had a pretty good intramural sports team at Auburn.
Yeah.
And we had some friends that were fraternity brothers of Mike Lewis's that we got to know socially as well. So our little intramural fraternity, our intramural football and basketball and softball teams were, I'm not bragging, but we got put in the small fraternity division. We were just we were just beating everybody we played in the first division they put us in, and the next year they said, you guys are going into the small fraternity division, and we won that. And then we went to the playoffs and played some fraternities that were so big they had 8 guys on offense and then 8 guys on defense. They had 2 full teams, and that's where we got exposed for the two-way players everybody was. But But it was a lot of fun. We gave them
It
fits.
was a lot of fun. Hey, intramural, yeah, that's how I kind of hooked up with some guys from Dothan before Phil and Chris and Robbie came up. I actually played on a flag football team with a lot of guys from here. Dickie Lillard, he played on it as a quarterback. That's where I really got to know him, and he was actually in building science, just like I was. But when we were living on Dean Road, of course, Kelly Powell and David Kinney moved in next door. So we had our own little group there. And I mean, it was, had a basketball goal out front. It wasn't basketball, it was wiffle ball or we were practicing for intramural sports. There was always something going on. People would come over to our place to hang out, just to do stuff.
Well, I was going to say,
most of it was Dothan people.
Yeah. And our visits to see you guys on the weekend or in the summer, we didn't really need to go out socially a whole lot. We might have gone and gotten something to eat, but there was always something to do and people there. And other than one emergency room trip for Phil from basketball, all the rest of it was quite memorable on the good side.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we should have some Bobby Brown playing in the background while we're talking about this.
That's right. That's right.
Wasn't it Mama Goldberg's, the Suds and Wash or something right up from you, Shane?
The what?
The Mama Goldberg Studs and Wash, where we would sit.
That was from the trailer park. Yeah, there was a place where you could go do your laundry, and there was a Mama Goldberg's right there in it.
That's
Mama had it figured out before everybody else.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
Go do your laundry and have a sandwich, and hey, there's beer being sold by the pitcher in here. So, yeah.
But we didn't do any of that. We just did our laundry.
Of course.
Way before ATMs and all of that, I had a little checking account. My parents would put a little money in it each month. But I can remember going to the Vanderbilt bookstore and cashing checks for like $2.86 for ridiculous amounts. Maybe that's all I had in the account at the time.
You talk about ATMs. I remember ATM lottery where you'd go and say, just to check your balance and go, oh, we're going to have a good time tonight.
I got $18.
Please have $20. Please have $20.
Too bad.
Yeah, if you had 40, you were getting through the whole weekend.
Oh, yeah, 20, 40 bucks, man. We're living it up this weekend.
You're going to party like a king if you had $40.
That's when you could get $5 and $1 bills out of the ATM.
Yes.
You guys came up a couple of springs for the spring game in April. I guess going into my sophomore and into my junior years, it was actually healthy for those. I just remember we had so much, there was so much to do. It's hard to cram it all in 36, 46, 48 hours. But I want to say, didn't you guys, on my floor in the towers, there was a common room off of the elevator. And typically whenever anybody's friends came, that's where they all, I don't know if you met any of the other guys or girls that weekends, but that's where everybody just kind of crashed, because my little dorm, you could reach all four walls standing in the middle of the room. But gosh, I remember those. And one of you guys had a big old sign. Somebody made a sign at the game that we were holding up.
Yeah, that was the spring game, wasn't it? Yeah.
Do you not remember us?
Remember us yelling? Remember us yelling to put you in the game and yelling, watch the crowd?
I do, and I don't remember which of the games, because I think y'all were there when we ran what's called the snake in the grass play, when Boo Mitchell, all SEC receiver, acted like he was talking to the coach on the sideline. I'm quarterback. I drop back, he takes off, and I just let it go. And it was a trick play, but it was a fun moment.
So Bernard, you got to talk about those spring games, because I'm not disrespecting Vanderbilt football at all, but at the time, you guys had about 100 people in the stands watching these games, maybe 200, and it was quite enough that we could be heard with anything we did. Yeah. And the four of us would start doing the wave in this stadium with 64 people in it. Yeah. And then we'd start chanting, "Put in Nauberg," and we start clapping behind it. And you got to remember some of that stuff.
We kind of stood out a little bit.
Without a doubt.
Get those fools out of here.
Man. He definitely remembered it, because do you remember the body language when he was standing there? Because he called the plays for a pretty decent quarterback that you backed up.
Yeah.
And I remember when you'd see the from behind. You can't. It would be.
Yeah, he would bow the head. He was
So
like,
Because I got all the coaches, including my head coach. Who are that? What is going on? They mean well.
We were relentless. We did not stop until he put
No,
you
that was all fun. That was all fun.
Heck yeah, we were there to see you play, man. I mean, come on.
Right. Yeah.
Just be thankful that we didn't have the big head posters that they got now, because we'd all have those in there.
I'm just glad you didn't bring up bullhorn. Huh?
We didn't go shirtless and paint our chest. And
yeah,
that's what we should have done. God,
we didn't need a bullhorn. We didn't need a bullhorn. He could hear everything.
No, not with a couple hundred people in the stadium. That's for sure.
We were sitting 40 feet behind them on the sideline. I mean, we could sit wherever we wanted to.
I remember the moment when Watson Brown, the coach, actually stopped and turned around and looked at us.
Yeah, he was like that. We're getting through. I graduated in spring of '90. I don't know if you guys were the same, if you ended up graduating the same time, but I remember that last semester when I finally am done with all sports obligations. I'm a little sad because, you know, my football organized sports, that's over. It's time to move to the next phase of life. And I knew it was going to be law school. I'd already taken the LSAT. It's going to take a year off. You and Chris and I and Matt Rufus and I ended up living together in Birmingham, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I just remember that spring, I tried to cram in 3.5 years of fun in that spring because I didn't get to do a whole lot of that stuff, or I didn't allow myself to do a lot of socializing. But here's my question for you guys. When you were in that last quarter back then or semester, do you remember, I mean, had you already formed plans in your mind? What was the next phase? What was the next step of what you were going to be doing in life? Rufus?
If you remember, that was kind of a recession year. And so a lot of people weren't hiring. I was pre-med and decided not to go to medical school. And upon finishing with a biology degree, it was too late to change majors. I didn't have a job. And there was no network that's out there now, believe it or not. But a network good enough at Birmingham Southern that, this is going to sound really odd to some of the people, but there was a book in the Career Center that people would put jobs in on paper. And I am floundering at what I'm going to find a job to do. Don't even know where to look, don't know what to do. And I happened to walk by this book, and flipping through the pages was the start of the worst jobs of my life. But I flipped through the jobs, and there's one for the Alabama Eye and Tissue Bank. As that was the year they expanded the law that everybody who became deceased had to be asked for organ donation, and so they were ramping up for that. And so at 21, I went and applied at the Alabama Organ Tissue Bank, and lo and behold, the guy hiring was a fraternity brother of mine. I didn't know him. He was a year ahead, so he was 5 years of difference. And he hired me, and that was my first job out without nothing to do. And as you know, you locked your door every night because you were scared I'd sleepwalk.
I don't even want to get to that yet. Jane, by the time you were winding up your Auburn years, where were you in that process? Did you have a job you had to be secured?
I finished up a couple quarters later, but I came back to Dothan, and like Chris said, sent resumes out, and it was, the jobs just really weren't out there at the time, and I wasn't totally sure I wanted to take off and move all far away for a job, trying to stay in this area. And I sent resumes out, and not much panned out. Really started working with a guy doing remodeling work, and getting the hands-on experience. And honestly, I've told people before, I think I learned at least as much about construction during that phase than I did while I was at Auburn, because I was actually learning different things about the trade and carpentry skills and just a lot of different things that later in life, when you think, oh, that was, a bad time, and I really learned a lot from that helped me later. So it all worked out. But yeah, at the time, you're like, okay, I went to school and here I am.
It's incredible what on-the-job experience can do for you.
Yeah. But I always thought Rufus's job was kind of neat. I mean, thinking of what all he was doing, I was like, that's just fitting for Rufus that he was going out and getting,
Removing corneas.
yeah, and carrying them in a cooler back to wherever.
Chris, when did law school
It was
percolate
such a
for
great
you?
thing with going to the ED and asking families.
Yeah, that part would be
for
bad.
their deceased. That, yeah, you grew up really fast with that.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Thinking through the process, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
Chris, when did law school kind of get on your horizon?
Oh, that was my plan from day one of post high school. So I applied and got accepted, and so I knew when I graduated from Auburn in the spring of '90 that I had a place in the school where I went to law school, and so that summer between graduation from Auburn and starting law school was the first summer since I was 14 that I did not work. I decided to take the summer off um, and just do nothing, which was terrible. That was a terrible decision. Sounded good in my head, but I was broke all summer and ended up trying to get a job as a clown juggling bowling balls and bowling pins, and that didn't work out. And I'm kidding. That was so I did not. I did one thing that summer. I went with you to Houston. We road trip to Houston.
We sure did. We drove out there. We sure did, because that was, you guys remember, I met Karen, well, for the second time in Thanksgiving of our senior year of '89. And then we started dating long distance. And other than, I mean, that was continuing to develop as a relationship as we got through the spring of '90 and into the summer. And eventually she moved to Montgomery when I started law school a year and a half later. But you're right, we made a long drive. And you remember the car that we were in? Do you remember my car?
Oh yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was that two-door Pontiac Grand Prix. That
Yes,
was
sir.
a cool little car, but man, you sat so low.
It was. Yes, it was a good trip though. We had fun out there. That was a good time.
It was fun. It was fun.
I remember that car. I remember the Regal, the Buick Regal.
Well, I had that most of college, and I only had that Pontiac Grand. I didn't have that very long.
Monte P is what, but Phil had one of those.
Yeah.
I had the Monte Carlo, the Monte C, and the Ponte P. I just remember.
So Bernard had that Buick Regal, and Chris had the Cutlass Supreme, and you had the Monte Carlo Shane, and Phil had the older Buick Regal.
And what did they all have in common? How many doors?
Two doors. Two big long doors down each side.
Big long doors.
Do they sell cars these days with only two doors? Have they in years and decades?
Well, if they do, I'm not looking at them. I can tell you that.
Man. And I used to take Birmingham-based football players who were friends of mine back and forth. That was a whole lot of dudes, a whole lot of mass trying to get into that Buick Regal. That was not fun. That car was put through the ringer.
Oh, the Regal was fantastic though. That was those cars all had a similar look, right?
Yeah.
And I think Nancy Miller pointed out in the comment from one of our other shows that everybody had a Cutlass Supreme. So
that's right. That's right.
And I was always mad because Shane was faster than mine.
Do what?
Shane's was faster than my car.
The Monte C.
Yours is probably worn out because you had worn it out driving so fast.
No, I just remember, where I wore it out was on I-10 racing a, oh gosh, what was it, Chris? your car.
Oh, my little Mazda RX-7.
Yeah.
Was it the RX-7 or the
Yeah.
TRX? The
Yeah, it
TRX.
was a Mazda RX-7.
And we're going down the interstate, and I've got it pegged at 124, and he's in the left-hand lane looking at me like a go-kart going, ee, ee. I'm like, I got nothing else.
I don't
Shane,
even know what you're talking about, Grizzly.
if I remember correctly, Shane, with all your trips to Columbus, you used to keep 1 gallon of gas in a tank in your trunk just for emergencies.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we all knew that,
Did.
Shane.
You sure
That was
did.
very dangerous. Y'all should have.
Let me give y'all some inside scoop on Shane's trips to Columbus. Okay. God bless Shane Wood. He's the man. So Shane would bring back food for the 4 of us that lived at South Dean from Columbus. And you hadn't lived until you've seen a can of green beans it's a can, and it's wrapped in white, and in black letters it says green beans, and that's all. There's no name brand. There's no nutritional information on it. It's just
That was generic, man. My dad he was a cookie salesman, and he would go in these stores and he would buy, it was probably the stuff they were liquidating, and he would buy it up. I'd go spend the night, and you're like, all right, I got you some groceries and all, and I would take them back.
the first time Phil and Robbie and I were looking at this can of generic green beans, I looked at Robbie Arnold and I said, how do we know this is green beans? How do we know in Vietnam if some kid didn't just put a different wrapper on it? What if we're opening something we're not supposed to be eating?
But y'all ate every bit of it. Y'all ate every bit of that stuff.
I was gonna say, it didn't matter with Robbie. Whatever it was going through ketchup before he ate it anyway.
English peas, corn.
Still does. Even that nasty Canadian whiskey he drinks, it's got to go through some ketchup.
So, yeah. Yep.
No, we did though. They ate
one of the
terrible menus on living with me, I'll tell you.
There was no nutritional value whatsoever, about 98% of what went through Dean. But one of the most memorable weekends you guys would do is that annual summer party. We'll leave the name of the party off of this, but the most epic thing was building the slip and slide in the backyard.
Yeah.
And I'll produce tomorrow or the next day a really great photo of that slip and slide. And there's a couple of us standing in the picture. But Maddox, you got to talk about how airborne Arnold would get going down this slip and slide. You got to give some context first.
Yeah, so this wasn't like your slip and slide from McDonald's, right? What we did was Phil's dad was in the construction business, and he had access to rolls of, what was it called, Shane? Visqueen?
Visqueen.
Yeah, this huge plastic. I mean, it was perfect.
They were like Phil brought 10 foot wide, 100 feet long.
Yeah. And so we made a daggum turbocharged slip and slide out of Visqueen, and we coated the thing in dishwashing oil, and we built at the end of it. It had a little kind of a ramp in the dirt, and then there was a pool that you were supposed to get into.
In theory,
yeah, and it worked perfectly. It was beautiful.
Shane was still learning about distance and
How long? The slide had to have been 40, 50 feet at least.
Oh yeah, it was across all the backyards, and the funny part,
and downhill.
Yeah,
downhill.
There was a hill at the far townhouse, so we came down that hill. But then what was funny was the day before, Phil and Robbie were out. We were digging this hole for the pool and putting the dirt out on the sides to create the pool. And they had nicknamed themselves Drywall and Sheetrock, and they were just talking smack the whole time, digging that hole. I mean, it was hilarious.
Wait, who was A-Frame? Which one of y'all was A-Frame?
That was me.
That was him.
We had Drywall, A-Frame, Sheetrock, and
I don't know who I was. But we had quite the slide in the backyard.
So you put the hole right next to the ramp.
Yeah.
After,
Yeah, we took all the
Yeah.
dirt and made the ramp and the other side of the pool.
And
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
was
the
also
problems-
adjacent to the pool?
well, there was a big pine tree there.
Fence somewhere.
Yeah, there was that. But go ahead.
There was a big pine tree. And so the first day, we're sort of operating the slip and slide like you're supposed to, under reasonable caution and safety. Of course, the second day, about 5 o'clock that afternoon, after going through probably, I don't know, maybe the second keg that floated, Robbie Arnold decided it was time to put some speed in motion on the slip and slide. So, of course, he was fast as lightning anyway, and he gets to the very edge of the thing and he takes off and he hits that ramp going every bit of 20 miles an hour. And he
is our
flies so
Tyreek
far in the air,
Hill.
He cleared the pool. I mean, he was
he is
gone.
evil. He is Evel Knievel. He went over the pool completely. He completely missed the pool. And of course, it was just belly laughs galore because it was just seeing it happen. Seeing it happen live and in person was it was incredible. So
it was great.
It's not like only 3 or 4 people were there. He
Oh,
had
no.
an audience.
Yeah,
guys,
yeah.
I mean, there were so many people.
Oh, our neighbors, the neighbors in the other townhouses, everybody was joining into this party.
Oh yeah. Well, it was too much fun not to. I mean, you couldn't just sit there and watch it. You had to be a part of it. It was fantastic.
But the beautiful thing about all these stories that we've been sharing tonight, those were, believe it or not, 35 to 40 years ago. And we're still talking about them and we're still laughing about them. And that's the beautiful thing about all of this.
No question about it.
That's why I love you guys. That's why I love these stories. There's a grain of truth in most of the stories, but our minds just kind of want to keep going. I mean, in my mind, Arnold flew 30 to 40 yards and landed in the next.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd agree with you.
Now, he did clear the pool. We know that. But in my mind, he hit the tree or hit somebody or something.
Yeah, went through the fence, knocked it over, all that good stuff.
Yeah. But tell me, I mean, isn't that, take it back to those parties. It's such a sweet, innocent time of our lives. And that's what college in that time period should be about.
Yeah.
It's pre-mortgages, it's pre-kids, it's pre-job responsibilities. But that's what makes these stories so valuable and so much fun to share, that we've all been sharing them for decades. And now folks get to hear them for the first time. So I hope they're enjoying hearing some of these.
Bernard, the good thing is they were so innocent and they were so, even though we did some crazy things, we may have broken a wrist or done something like that, but there was never, we didn't have to worry. We didn't worry about it all like you do now. Yeah.
What was crazy is everything turned into a game at Dean Road. If somebody was sitting in the living room watching TV, somebody's eating something off of a napkin, they ball the napkin up and boom, cup ball, handball takes off. All right, you got to hit it over the blinds. That's a home run. If you hit it over here, but you got to sit in the what was it? What was the big chair that we were all in?
Papasan chair.
Papasan, yeah. You had to sit in that, hit the ball. I mean, this was
the best example is at Arnold's wedding.
Oh, yeah.
The football game and $800 worth of damage.
Yeah.
Richard Lee, Edward Lee, holy cow.
How we did not get thrown out of that hotel, I will never.
Well, because I think
and
Bob
your wedding, Bernard, that wiffle ball out there in front of the hotel was epic.
That was we had like 30 people, kids our age, playing wiffle ball 3 or 4 hours before the wedding, and Karen's mom comes out. It's like, what? But there's 2 stories we can't get out of here without sharing, and I've teased them earlier. One was my payback for the Maddoxes later in, I think, the summer of '87, when it sounded like a shotgun blast when I jumped into the pool at the Maddox's house off their diving board, when in fact I split it in half and broke the diving board. And I want to say, wasn't Bill there at the time this happened? But what I can't remember, Chris, does that predate, or was that before or after Bib Gunner and our outing?
Oh, yeah. So So the pool incident was after, because you had been through a year, maybe two, of weight training at Vanderbilt. The
Oh,
Bib Gunter
no,
incident was our
I
senior
blew
year.
up, dude. I went crazy with the anyway. Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
So because in high school we can handle you sort of in the Gulf of Mexico football games. Your
Mm-hmm.
first year after hitting that Vanderbilt weight program, you were like a bull in a china shop running over people down there at the beach.
Remember me putting Phil through the sheetrock at Tibbs's house?
Yes.
Or
That
you?
was
I thought it
me.
was Phil. You? Yeah.
No, that was me. I was going to say, I used to be able to handle Bernard because I did the weight training and I was, squirrely. And I grabbed Bernard. He looked at me, took two steps, and put me through Robbie Tibbs' brand new house out in Bocage, and his dad's in the pool room.
D1, baby. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah.
This is
So
summer of '87, and you were going through some heartbreak at the time.
not in '87. Nah, not in '87. Anyway, the let me tell the story of the Bib Gunner story. So we were still seniors. We had not graduated yet.
That's right. You're so
And
right. You're so right.
and the young lady I was dating at the time, I had learned after spring break that she had decided to re-engage, a friendship with her ex-boyfriend while I was on the cruise with Shane and Chris Lee.
She stepped out on you, Maddox, and that's
She
not
was
right.
seeing other people.
I,
She was
I
just seeing other people before you knew
that,
y'all were seeing other people.
that's exactly right. She just beat me to the punch. That's all that was. And so, bored in high school, your senior year, your last semester, Bernard and I are riding around on I don't know, call it a Tuesday night with nothing to do at 9 o'clock at night.
Gosh, I forgot about this.
And we were over in her neighborhood, and we ride by her house, and all the lights are off, like everybody's asleep over there. So at the time, there is a city commission election in play, and one of the guys in that neighborhood running for office was a gentleman named Bib Gunter, and he had tons of support in this area, and he had all these Bib Gunner for District 3 commission signs all over this neighborhood. So Bernard and I thought it'd be fun. Well, I thought it'd be funny if we put 3 or 4 neighbor signs in her yard. Okay.
300 or
And so
400.
we put 3 or 4 in there and looked at it. And then we really got tickled. And we were like, well, I mean, go big or go home, right? So we ended up putting, I don't know, probably close to 30 signs in this girl's front yard. And we left, and that was it. We just put the signs in the yard and we left. And fast forward, maybe not the next Friday, but the Friday after that, it's about 6 or 6:30 at night on a Friday, and my parents are at the house. They're sitting on the back porch, which was their tradition on Friday night. They'd sit on that back porch and talk about their day and their week and all that good stuff. And I hear the doorbell ring. So I go to the front door, which is odd because if you ever came to my house back in the day, nobody went to the front door. Everybody came in through the back porch because that's where my parents usually were, and everybody wanted to speak to them. So anyway, I opened the door, and there is a guy in a suit, and he's holding a badge, and he says, "My name is Detective So-and-so. I'm with the Dothan City Police. Are you Chris Maddox?" And I said, "Hold that thought." And I shut the door and I went running as fast as I could to the back porch. And I said, "Mom, Dad, I promise you there's an explanation for this. I'm not sure what it is yet, but there's a police officer at the front door that wants to talk to y'all about me."
Beginning of the law career.
My mind's racing, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is about. So I go back and open the front door, and I'm like, "Yes, sir, come on in."
Oh my gosh.
My parents are coming in from the back screen porch, and he comes in and introduces himself, and he sits down and he says, whatever, my name's Detective. I wish I could remember. I can't remember. Anyway, he says, I'm investigating an incident regarding some political signs that were criminalized, and I've got some information from a Joel Naumberg that you may have been involved in this. And I'm sitting there thinking, son of a bitch, he sold me out. So I'm like, sir, my boy, my man, my homie has thrown me down the river. So, long story short, if anybody's wondering, Bernard sang like a canary 2 minutes into his questioning and immediately gave him me. He gave me up and didn't even think about it. Just said, oh, yeah, Chris Maddox, 1504 Dartmouth Court. Here's his phone number, blah, blah, blah.
It was his idea.
Bernard probably drove him over there. He's probably out sitting out front.
He probably chauffeured him over there. I'll take you right there, sir. Just sit tight.
I'm not going to dispute any of that, but I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think we were in your car that night. But how did it end up at my house?
No, it got to your house because we were in your car, and one of those neighbors saw what we were doing and wrote your car tag down. Okay. And they gave your car tag on the Buick Regal to the police.
Okay.
And they ran the tag, and that's how they got to Joel. And then they got to me because we're homies and we're always going to be there for each other.
What your first run in the law?
I guess all I can say is, are we good?
Yeah, we've been good for a long time, but it's
been a minute. Are we good?
Because the guy did say, he said, well, I'm going to have to talk to Judge McFadder about this. And of course, he was the juvenile court judge, and he said there may be some charges. And I was like, oh, well, that as long as I'm not going down by myself, that's fine, sir.
Yeah. And cue to the end, nothing happened.
Yeah, they didn't charge us. It was all fine. I had to call and apologize to Bib Gunter, and he was cool about it. He laughed. He said, "High school prank. I get it. You didn't hurt. You didn't harm the signs. You didn't break the signs. You didn't burn them. You just moved them from one yard to another." And it was all.
But that wasn't the bigger hurdle for you. Did you have to address this with her?
Well, I called her parents and apologized to them as well.
Yeah, and,
they took it a little better than I thought they would.
I was going to say, I would think that'd be 10 times worse.
Well, what's funny, what's funny. I actually saw her while I was tailgating at Auburn this past year for one of the games, and we talked for about 10 minutes about that whole episode. So
awesome.
I got to catch up with her a little bit. That was funny.
That's so great.
So and then the pool incident is, that was after you had gone off to Vanderbilt, and we were all hanging out at my house swimming one day, and I don't know why we didn't do that a lot, but this particular day we decided we'd go swim, and bulked up Bernard decides he's going to do something off the diving board. I don't know what you had intended, but you just took a step and hit the end of the diving board like anybody would to start a dive. And as soon as you hit that step, it just collapsed the entire diving board. It just popped and broke. And I mean, it basically snapped, not quite in half, but it broke the diving board.
It was fairly new, wasn't it?
I thought I got hit in the back of the head by the diving board, which I didn't. But it made such a loud noise. It was almost like a gunshot.
Yeah, it was very loud.
It scared the crap out of me. I'm sure anybody watching it was amazed. But that was my way of saying thank you to Chris for all of those fun times we had just gone through.
Yeah, that was good. We got it replaced, and everything was fine with that too. So it all worked out. We just banned you from getting on the diving board ever again after that.
Oh, it was self-banned as well, and I hadn't been on one since. Guys, we got just a couple more minutes, and I want to tell you who's popped in. I've been bad about that. Michael Canny, Will Marshall, Amy Anderson Clark, Reggie White, Coach Rick Cleveland. Hey, Coach. Let's see. And there's been so many others. I'm sorry, I just hadn't kept up with that tonight. I've been so ingrained in our conversations. We get through the college years. Rufus and I end up living together for almost a year in Birmingham. And after that, and we still played wiffle ball in the parking lot.
We did.
At the complex. And then I go to Montgomery. Karen and I moved to Montgomery. She comes from Texas. And I start law school. She starts her graduate program. And we're all in that weird transition time of life. Chris, you're over in Jackson. Shane, I think you're at Dothan. Rufus, you stayed in Birmingham for many years because I know you would be at that point, and she's in school. and then we're all starting to get married and starting that next phase of life. And I think we all were at all of each other's, if not in most all each other's weddings. And I think that's been one of the beautiful things, Arnold included, Bittner, Phil. That's been one of the beautiful things that we've just been able to maintain such contact and sharing ridiculous stories like these tonight have been just so beautiful, I think, for the friendships. And I'm love that we've been able to share them with so many folks of recent. So
Yeah, we'll maybe need to talk about it next time. But we at some point in time we're going to have to discuss Robbie Arnold's the night before his wedding. That
Yeah.
That was epic.
well, guys, no time like the present, because to the extent that we can share about it, even in his absence, we've teased it. We got to talk about it.
I mean, that was an epic battle.
I'm going to set the tone for those who don't know when it was. It was the weekend of the first SEC championship game in fall of December of 92. It was the Florida-Bama Shane Matthews, Antonio Langham game. It was that weekend. And we were in Auburn, but we didn't stay in Auburn a whole lot. So any of you guys want to pick it up, you're more than welcome to share what you feel on this PG-ish type show you want to share.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Shane?
I'll get back with y'all later.
Okay. Let's go. Shane, you're the safest one to share, so go for it, bud.
I just remember we took a ride over to Columbus, hung out over there a little while, and then we made our way back from Columbus to a hotel in, was it Opelika?
Yeah, right there on the highway. Yeah.
And we're sitting in the hotel room, and somehow, just like sitting in the living room with a napkin, we come up with this game of playing goal line stand between the two beds in somebody's room. And you had to start at one, and the defensive line was in the middle, and you had to score landing on the other bed.
3-on-3.
With a brand new roll of toilet paper.
Yeah, roll of toilet paper.
And a roll of toilet paper, yeah. And again, Super Robbie shows up, just like he did on the slide. And I'll let you guys add some more to that.
This was, if I remember correctly, this is the Friday night before the Saturday wedding.
Yes.
We had already been to Columbus to see some adult entertainment and dinner. Had come back.
That's a good way to put it, Bernard.
It's
I
late.
didn't go on that.
Well, my mom's watching, so I'm leaving it at that.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Carlisle.
I think y'all went. I must have come later.
I remember playing pool with Phil. That's what I remember.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. It was late. Oh, it was late on Friday night. And you're right. Arnold shows up, and the game just got. I remember at the end of the game, there's destroyed furniture all through the room. It's two twin beds or whatever size beds they were. It was two beds. The Lee brothers were there. All of us. Phil was there. I don't remember if Bittner was. I don't think Rick was there. But I remember.
You were asleep. You were asleep in the beginning.
There was torn clothing. There was bruising. There was. It was like we had just gone through.
There were busted lips. I mean, it was
Yes,
full
brutal
contact. Everything you had football. It was way worse than what we did in the Gulf down in Panama City Beach.
Oh yeah, I mean, 150 square foot of full on.
Because what it evolved into, besides, we first started with the door closed because we're going to be quiet. Doors closed. Okay, great. Then somebody gets the bright idea. Well, I'm going to open the door so I can get 3 more feet of stepping speed to get, and people are launching themselves from the hallway at full speed, trying to get over to that second bed and just getting destroyed. I mean, full contact. Just hit them as hard as you can. And everybody just kept laughing harder and laughing harder. And if you popped up with your lip bleeding, everybody laughed even harder. I mean, it was just
surprised there were no teeth knocked out.
I was too. I mean,
didn't we get up the next morning and go play football somewhere on a field somewhere too? That was what Robbie wanted to do before the wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
I don't know how
Helen had a great
people
sense of
were
humor,
limping.
but that weekend was not the time for Helen's sense of humor to come out. She was not a happy camper about some of this.
It just was. I think we just decided we were going to get kicked out. We were just going to go big because, there's no excuse to explain why they didn't come up and tell us to shut up and get in the room. They never did.
I really think it was Robbie's parents were in the room directly below us. I think if I remember Bob saying that, and said, "Yes, we heard every single step y'all made the entire night." And then I think the only reason we didn't get that was the rooms that were within a couple of below us, because we were on the second floor, was the wedding party, and they knew it was us. I still don't know how the people half a mile away didn't complain.
And if I remember correctly, Rob's wedding was at night. And I want to say, Rufus, you had a little transistor radio. We were listening to the game in our tuxes as we're proceeding into the ceremony. But that's how most of our weddings get-togethers were.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all remember. I sang a sterling rendition of Santa Claus is Coming to Town with the band at that particular reception.
Yeah.
Thank God there were no phones back then that could record that kind of stuff.
Well, guys, I think we've come to a good spot to pause. We may or may not. We're going to talk this week. We may have the post-college years as a final wrap-up to this series. If it's not, gentlemen, I have enjoyed so much these 5 episodes and reliving just some phenomenal fun times and great core memories that we've all shared.
Same here.
Sharing some time.
Absolutely. It's awesome.
Yeah, my wife gets mad all the time. My wife gets mad all the time. She said, you're often asked at our age, if you could go back in time, when would you go back? And she gets mad because, outside of the birth of my child, it would be probably going back to this. And she goes, well, that didn't include me. I said, well, you were there some of the time. You weren't there all the time. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean we don't love her, because we do. But, it just was crazy. I mean, I don't know. Some of these things were crazy. We can't even talk about half the stuff. So,
well, I was going to say, for the audience who's listening and watching, you guys have really just heard a good swath of the stories. You haven't heard a lot of the stories. Oh, no. That's kind of the intent. And this is saving Shane a lot of anxiety that we leave it where we've left it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Amen.
As he said when we started, the bro code still in contact.
Exactly.
That's right.
No statute on the bro code, right?
That's exactly right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we're going to sign off for this episode of Circle City Goats and Dogs. Y'all have a good night. We'll catch y'all next time.
Bye.